Hi there, I'm Lisa Taylor, and this is Ideas on Truth. Thank you so much for joining me. If you are watching on the replay, put a hashtag replay and let me know where you're watching from, because it's always fun to see who's coming from around the world. Tonight I'm talking about extracting material beliefs so that we can make room for spiritual understanding. Expel the material beliefs to make room for spiritual understanding. Well, how do you expel material beliefs, and what the heck are material beliefs anyway? So, Colleen, you are always number one coming on. Thank you for joining me. So there's a line in Mrs. Eddy has in Science and Health where she says, material beliefs must be expelled to make room for spiritual understanding. So in the transformational community, there's a lot of talk about the underlying beliefs and sort of root causes of issues that we carry forward. A lot of them having to do with the stories that we carry forward from the past and what beliefs do we have about ourselves and others based on those stories. You know, beliefs about ourselves, beliefs about other people, beliefs about sort of mankind in general, humankind in general. What would be a few of the beliefs? That I'm not good at math, that I'm a very critical person, that not good at math. That's actually not true. I really love math, and that's not true. But I'm just saying in general, that I'm critical, that I'm judgmental, that I'm not athletic, or that just beliefs that you sort of underlying beliefs that you have carried forward, that you've identified with throughout your life, that you feel stressed by certain circumstances, or that you just you're not really a morning person, you don't do really well under this condition or that condition, that you're sickly, that you're constantly sort of catching colds, or that you name it. There are all sorts of beliefs, and we know what they are. So if we're going to expel those beliefs in order to make room for spiritual understanding, how the heck do we do that? We don't want to focus on the negative, because what we focus on expands. So we don't want to go on sort of the witch hunt and try to find what are those beliefs underlying. Generally speaking, I can only speak for myself, but generally speaking, if I'm prayed up and I've meditated and I've centered myself for the day, those beliefs tend to stand out in stark relief to what I know to be true. So the approach that seems to work the most sort of simply is to be focused on and prayed up during the day, in the morning, do your morning routine, get aligned with your source, get aligned with God, get aligned with your true self, and then things that crop up during the day that stand out in stark relief to that are the beliefs that we want to expel. But how do we expel them? There's another line in Science and Health, I'm kind of pulling from different places in this book, where she talks about the way to extract error from mortal mind is to pour in truth through flood tides of love. And it always comes back to love. It always comes back to loving our true self, loving the true nature of our being. And where does that true nature come from? We are the reflection, the manifestation of the one God, the one love, the one mind, the infinite love that is. So if we are a manifestation of that, it's very natural for us to express love and to love that nature in ourself, that true nature in ourself. So as we love ourself more, love thy neighbor as thyself, as we love ourself more, we are able to we love ourselves, see ourself truly. We are able to see our neighbor truly and love our neighbor truly. That doesn't mean the gushy kind of romantic love that we see in the rom-coms. That is the love that is divine. How does God love us? That is how we need to be loving ourselves and seeing ourselves. That is how we need to be loving our neighbor. It doesn't mean you have to be close to them emotionally. You can love somebody from a distance. You can love somebody in politics who you completely disagree with. What does that love look like? That love looks like seeing them accurately through the lens of love, seeing their good qualities. Sometimes it's hard to see a good quality, particularly in political figures that we disagree with. See good qualities. Start with their breathing. They're alive. They're expressing a sense of life. Just start there. Just start with real basic stuff. They're speaking. They have a voice. You may not like what they're saying, but they're speaking. So they're uttering expression. So start with real basic things. If it's difficult for you to love somebody, see them through the lens of love. See them with God's eyes. The Christ consciousness, truth consciousness, is the balm that soothes your troubled thought and helps you see them through love. So, kind of getting back to the point. Okay, so how do you extract or expel the material beliefs to make room for the spiritual understanding? The way to extract error from mortal mind is to pour in truth through flood tides of love. Love yourself, pouring in truth. Well, identifying yourself rightly is stating the truth. Identifying another rightly is stating the truth. Truth with a capital T. Truth being the synonym for God, the synonym for love, the synonym for life and mind and principle. And these are the 7 synonyms that I have learned through the study of this divine science. The definition of God includes these 7 principles: principle, mind, soul, spirit, life, truth, and love. And those who study divine science know this. Another name for divine science is Christian Science. Another name is the science of mind. Anyway, so in studying this science, you learn these synonyms for God, all of which have been taken out of the Bible, all of which have been proven and demonstrated as divine laws that we can lean on and express and apply in our lives. Extract error from mortal mind by pouring in truth through flood tides of love. It comes back to love. Okay, so here's a little analogy. So say I have this jar with a really small mouth and I can't get my hand through the mouth of the jar, right? And the jar is filled with ping pong balls. And I want to get the ping pong balls out of the jar. The ping pong balls are, the erroneous thoughts, the erroneous beliefs that I'm trying to extract. How do I get them out? I pour in water so that they float out and up through the lid of the jar, through the mouth of the jar. So I'm pouring in for things to be extracted. I'm pouring in truth. I'm not focusing on extracting something. You know that one of my favorite ideas, which I did a video on a long time ago, you can't not do something. It's really hard to stop doing something. What we focus on when we're trying to change our behavior or change our beliefs, change our thinking, is to focus on what we do want to think, what we do want to do. If you're trying to stop smoking, a lot of people struggle with that because you're trying to stop something. Choose an activity that you want to do instead, because that's something that you don't want to be doing. Choose something that you do want to be doing and focus on doing something. When one of my kids was really little, they used to like to come and pick up the lid on the diaper pail, and it was stinky. So I didn't want him to do that. But he'd always come in and he'd pick up the lid. So instead of saying, no, don't do that, I redirected his activity and we turned it into a drum. So I would have him come and beat on it and make drumming noises, and that became a fun activity, which of course was the distraction technique, which a lot of moms know about. But it was redirecting the activity. And it's the same thing we're talking about here. We're redirecting thought so that we are thinking what we want to be thinking, turning our thought towards love and towards truth, and away from the erroneous, egoic, false nature of man to the true nature of man. A lot of the videos I've done recently have very much focused on where is our thinking and what are we doing with our thinking. And there's so much to be said for disciplining thought and being very aware. I mean, awareness is a huge quality that people want to cultivate. Being aware of where your thinking is. What is your thinking focused on? How many times do we go through the day and focus on negative things about ourselves and about other people? A lot. About troubles and replaying those tapes in our head and rehearsing things that happened in the past, or rehearsing fears that we're afraid of something that's going to happen in the future. Instead of being in the moment and being aware of the moment and recognizing where our thinking is and making sure that we are aligning our thought in each moment with the truth, not with error. So I'm sitting at my desk, I'm working on a project, I'm looking at a spreadsheet or building a communication that I need to send out in an email, and I'm struggling with a sentence, or I'm trying to figure something out, and my thought gets distracted. I have no idea what I'm saying. I'm like totally losing my train of thought, and I'm just going with it. So just work with me here. So I lose my train of thought, and I'm going off in thinking about what somebody said to me and kind of rehearsing this thing. Instead of being in the moment and focusing on what I'm doing and instead of hearing the past or the future and getting distracted, listening for the right thought in that moment. We do that so many times. It's a waste of time. Love yourself. Love yourself. Start with love, pouring in truth through flood tides of love. I guess it's a very simple thought, isn't it? There's another concept, and I know this is not a new thought, but there's the idea of, God shining through the window pane and the light shining through the pane. And if the pane of glass is very smoky and dirty, the light can't shine through. And Mrs. Eddy actually talks about that. She says, the mortal mind through which truth appears most vividly is that one which has lost much materiality. So it's, the light shining through the window pane, God shining through our thought is going to shine. You're going to see God shining through as thought is purified and released of that material haze thinking, that hazy thinking that is materially based, as we purify our thought. The mortal mind through which truth appears most vividly is that one which has lost much materiality, much error, in order to become a better transparency for truth. That's the whole quote. And when we pour in truth through flood tides of love, we are extracting error. We are extracting error from mortal mind. We are expelling those material beliefs. And all of this is the process by which truth will appear most vividly, will be expressed through us. It'll leave room for spiritual understanding. When we talked about the ping pong balls coming up and out of that jar, as the ping pong balls come up and out of the mouth of the jar, there's more room for water in the jar. The water, of course, being the analogy for the spiritual understanding and the spiritual perception. Mrs. Eddy talks about spiritual understanding, that understanding is the line of demarcation between the real and the unreal. So as we gain that sense of spiritual understanding, we are starting to discern the difference between the real and the false belief, between the real divine sense of identity and the false egoic sense of mortal mind, where ego is running the show, where fear is running the show. And you can also say, ego, fear, divine love. It's like fear and love, or ego and God, ego and divine identity, fear and love. And if you are leaning into that fear camp and you're chasing down, trying to go on those witch hunts and figure out what's wrong with you, what can I be disgusted about with myself now? No, don't do that. Don't go into that place. I say that to myself because I think we all tend to, Mortal mind tends to want to find fault. That's the whole fear-based thing. We want to lean into love. We want to lean into what is right, what is good, what do we love about ourselves? And that's not conceited. It's actually the most humble thing we can do. What do we love that we express that is God-given? What do we love about who God made us to be? And when we claim that, and we claim the source of that, and we're not saying, oh, this is all me, it's all coming from me. No, it's you as the manifestation of God. And as you claim that, truly, humbly claim that God is your source and that you are the manifestation of all right ideas, you can humbly claim all goodness and all that is right and good in who you are. And then the power of God is behind you. And then the power of God and expression is behind you. And that is when the world changes. That is when we become world shifters and change agents, when we become true expressions of the divine. Because then divine power is behind everything we're doing. Leaning into love, leaning away from fear, leaning into love. And fear naturally falls away as we do. So, how do we? Material beliefs must be expelled to make room for spiritual understanding. How do we do that? We extract error from mortal mind by pouring in truth through flood tides of love, loving oneself. I get a call. I don't know if it just pauses or you actually see me still talking while I'm getting a call. Sorry about that. My mom was calling, so I have to call her back. So, and then becoming the transparency, making sure that your window is clean. So do your work, do your daily work in the morning. Make sure your thought is clear. Make sure you're aligning yourself with God, with your true identity, finding your true north and lining up with that. And then things that come up that are based in belief, they stand out in stark relief. You know that analogy that I shared? And then I'm gonna wrap up. I don't want to go too long tonight. I feel like I'm kind of repeating myself. You know that analogy about the person who was hired to recognize the counterfeit bills? There are two different people who were hired, and one guy decides he's gonna study all the counterfeiters in the world and make sure he knows exactly what those counterfeiters are doing. And he spends a lot of time studying and researching and making sure that and his boss comes to him and says, well, what if there's a counterfeiter that you don't know? What if there's a technique that you don't know about? How are you going to recognize that counterfeit bill? So that's one camp. The other camp is the guy who says, I'm going to study the real bill so completely that if anything comes along that's not that and doesn't match that, I'll recognize it. So he doesn't have to go out and look for all the counterfeits and study all the counterfeits, just like we don't have to go out and try to discover all the beliefs. We don't have to try to sort of go into that research mode of discovering all the beliefs and go digging around in the dark in our being. We can focus on the true nature of man and focus on the true nature of loving ourself and loving our true nature, so that whenever something comes up that doesn't match that, we recognize it instantly and we say, no, that's a belief, that's not part of who I am. And we pour truth on it, we pour love on it, and it just dissolves. It can't. The false beliefs cannot exist in love. It's kind of like, I was listening to a talk that had to do with sort of alkaline and acidic states in the body, and cancer cannot exist in an alkaline body. And it's like false beliefs cannot exist in a love-based body. They just can't, body of thought. So that's what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve that love-based thinking in which false beliefs cannot survive. They just dissolve of their own nothingness. They cannot survive in a thought filled with love. Now, good thoughts are an impervious armor. Clad therewith, you are completely shielded from the attacks of error of every sort, and not only yourselves are safe, but all whom your thoughts rest upon are thereby benefited. So I'm pulling in a lot of quotes here. That one is from Proseworks. also by Mary Baker Eddy. It's in Miscellaneous Writings. So much love to you. Thank you so much for watching. This is a little bit quicker than usual. I've got to hop off. I'm sure you don't want to listen to me for another half hour. I went a little bit long on the last couple of shows, but thank you so much for watching. So much love to you. Put these things into practice, share this out, and we will see you next time. And I will put this up on YouTube in a couple of days. Okay, bye.